Coming to you live on tape from the beautiful studios in Merrifield, Virginia, just steps away from the multiplex where Eon Flux will be unspooling this Friday. It's the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers. With me, BJ Kubaroulis of the Connection Newspapers, and of course, the lovely and talented Jeff Graham of the Connection Newspapers. We have for you this evening football recap from the regional title game, football preview for the state playoffs, and a huge honking basketball preview talking about boys and girls for all four districts. Is going to be epic here on the Fairfax Sports Report. But before we begin, let us discuss the folks who make this show possible every single week. We are, of course, talking about the Underwriters, Quality Care Ford Service Center, conveniently located in Fairfax, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299, and CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. Boys, before we get underway with the hijinks, we, of course, had a bit of a hiatus for the holiday. How was your turkey day? The people want to know.
I'm going to say my turkey day was incredible. I had some really good pie, actually. I was actually eating the pie. I wasn't wearing the pie.
Were you really?
I was eating the pie. It was actually incredible.
All right, fine, Captain segue. Let's hold on. Let's talk about the fact that the last time we were on the air, we did make a wager that, well, go ahead. Evan Royster of the Westfield Bulldogs against Robinson in the semifinals.
Right.
And what was said wager?
The wager was that if Evan Royster didn't run for 100 yards, that one, BJ Kubaroulis, as I go third person on myself, was going to have to take a pie in the face.
Take a pie to the face.
And I believe Evan did break his 100
I believe
yards.
Evan ran for 45 yards on his first or second carry, and I was standing on the sideline, and I could tell in the stadium that there was a hush in the crowd as they all sort of came to the realization that you would not be taking a pie.
Exactly. It wasn't the fact that, oh my gosh, we're in trouble, or oh my gosh, we may not win this game. It was, oh my gosh, this kid's not going to have pie all over his face.
Exactly.
And in fact, it wasn't on my face. It was just, I had pie over the Thanksgiving break, and I ate pie. I didn't have it on me.
Not on your face.
Because in essence, what happened was, which usually happens, I was right.
Right.
And, can't argue with that.
Exactly.
And lo and behold, Greg,
yes,
neither team is going to the state tournament.
It's true. It's the curse of the pie. It's the crust curse.
Well, and another thing I must say that I was right on was Oakton, picking them from the beginning of the year, even though I bowed out early and picked against them
I know.
this week.
And you got all kinds of flack for that, too.
Should probably get some pie for that.
Well, all right. But I will admit now on the air freely that you were completely right about Oakton. I mean, I had my doubts about Oakton being the best team in Division 6. I thought Robinson was better. I thought Westfield was better. But in the end, okay, congratulations. You were the king of the prognosticators when it comes to Oakton being the best team in the northern region.
When it comes to Oakton being the best team in the northern region, because I must say that my pigskin prognostication was not very respectable.
It should be noted that in the pigskin prognostication box that runs in the Connection newspapers every week, that although I was clearly within range of winning
first place going into the last week, I believe.
Yeah, I believe I was in first place. Jeff Graham shanghaied me in the last week of picks to move into a tie for first place.
Thank you, Stonebridge and NC State.
Yeah, I made the mistake of picking my alma mater, Maryland.
Nice.
And
Nice.
my Maryland let me down. Broke my heart, really. Many donuts were consumed in the Frisian house that evening, my friends. But anyway, we mentioned Oakton and Westfield. Before we get to that, let's mention the D5 game, which was Edison making their second trek out to Loudoun County in as many weeks to take on Stonebridge this time. They beat Loudoun Valley to get to the title game. They faced the Stonebridge Bulldogs, and they lost that game 29-21 in a very exciting game in the fourth quarter. I was out there watching it, and I'll tell you one thing right now. As soon as I got to that game and saw that Devin Clark, the starting running back for Edison, was on the sideline, not wearing pads, was in street clothes, I said to myself, it's over. Because Edison is a different team when he's hurt, because it completely changes what they do or what they're able to do running the football. Even though that Justin Brock is a pretty good backup, scored a big touchdown for him in that game against Stonebridge, Clark is is a breakaway back. And really their offense takes on a different dimension when he's there. But more importantly, when Brock has to play running back, he's also the team's starting linebacker. Going both ways like that really takes its toll. And you saw that defense starting to wear down, and Knight Justice and Glenn and those guys on Stonebridge really getting more opportunities to run the football in the fourth quarter as the Edison defense physically wore down. So I was surprised. I thought Edison was the class of D5. I thought they were going to win the region. And lo and behold, they lose the game in the fourth quarter. Some gutsy play calling by Mickey Thompson, going for 2 after scoring a touchdown to take the lead. So hey, Stonebridge, all credit to them. They come to Division 5 in the Northern Region, move up from AA to AAA, win the regional title.
I think that's the crazy thing about Stonebridge is I think BJ, you covered them last year, as did I. We thought that team last year was head and shoulders better than this year's team, coming into the season. Obviously, they had similar results, but Stonebridge did not win the Region 2 championship last year in the AA level, and they win this region. So I think that was a bit surprising. So we'll see how they proceed from here. But Stonebridge is a team that led late in the fourth quarter, but trailed in both of the games that they played in the region. They were trailing against Madison, trailed against Edison. And they won a couple games during the regular season that they were behind, and it looked real gloomy for them. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of proceed from here, whether they are able to continue that come from behind mentality, or whether it's going to catch up to them eventually.
You make a good point. I mean, you mentioned the guys that were on that team last year. They had an incredible cast. They have the Gatorade Player of the Year for Virginia, Ed Wang, who is now at Virginia Tech. They had some really, the quarterback, Sean Ryan, broke several school records in passing. So they had an incredible cast of players. And I wonder if they had made that move last year to the AAA, to the Liberty, they could have easily won a state title with that team. And maybe they just ran into the wrong team in the AA Quest to do that last year. But wow, for them to be able to reload, and then not only reload, but move to a different district where it's totally different competition, and still be able to compete at what is supposed to be a higher level, not only compete and win, is really a testament to that program. And I think a lot of it has to do with people not knowing what's coming at them. I mean, they run that single wing offense out there. They do a lot of things different than people out here do. And I think now that they've gotten a chance to see it, they may have an opportunity next year to kind of take them down a notch,
And with the single wing, I think the most effective thing about it in the Edison game was the fact that when you run that sort of offense, you're able to come at a defense in so many different ways, using so many different weapons. I mean, you've got direct snaps, you've got the little spinorama move they do with the line before they run through it. And I think once they were able to establish Shamar Knight Justice in the second half, and they found a way to kind of use him in the middle of the line, they just went back to the well again and again and again, and just completely wore down the Edison defense. I will say this, though. I mean, beyond Devin Clark being injured, Keone Kyle, the fullback, didn't practice all week. They were missing a starting D lineman. Justin Smith, their top receiver, pulled a hamstring in the first quarter. They were not the Edison team offensively that I expected to see out there. They looked disjointed. Smith didn't catch a pass in the second half. I think the injuries definitely played a role in this game, and it's unfortunate that we didn't really, in my opinion, we didn't get to see these two teams at full strength going back and forth against each other. That being said, Stonebridge, one of their top linemen went down. They definitely had their share of injuries in the game too. But for Edison, with the number of kids that are on that team, with the depth they have on the team or lack thereof, to have those guys nicked up in a game like that, I think really affected it. And don't discount the fact that they took a beating from Loudoun Valley in the semifinal, and it really showed in that Stonebridge game, because in the fourth quarter, Edison had no answer for that running game.
But and as Coach Vaughn Lewis said after the game, another thing that was a big factor was just the physicality of Stonebridge. He said that his kids next year, especially the offensive linemen, need to get in the weight room and start lifting weights, and they're going to need to be able to take a pounding. Whereas I think you saw them wore down a little bit against Stonebridge, having played such a tough game against Loudoun Valley.
You guys have both covered Mickey Thompson as a coach. What makes him so successful? I mean, we're talking about a team now that has won 3 regional titles, 2 at Region 2 and 1 in the Northern Region in the last 4 years.
I think one thing is he has a tremendous coaching staff, who knows what they're doing, and he's an aggressive coach. You'll see him do things that maybe other coaches won't. You'll see him try an onside kick, whereas maybe a coach will try that maybe once a season. He'll do it once a game. He'll go for the 4th and 1. He'll go for the 2-point conversion. He'll take guys who are normally running single wing and he'll spread them out. Shamar Nice Justice was a heck of a receiver this year when they ran spread offense. So he's a very aggressive coach. He likes to do different things, and I think that brings out the best in his players. Players who. They're not just kind of slated for one position, and he tries to get the best out of them.
The reason, Jeff, that they're able to go for things on 4th and 1 and do little kicks here and there that most teams wouldn't do, and go for crazier opportunities. They're not considered crazy opportunities because of their practice. Their practice is run almost like a collegiate practice. I mean, the way that they break it down, the way that they teach the offense, the intensity that's at practice is something I haven't seen in a lot of programs. I mean, it is structured. It is, you're working with the linebackers coach. And Mickey is there, and Mickey is actually not just sitting back. He's involved. He's working with the guys, and you see that at a lot of high schools. I know that's not very unique, but what is unique is the kids' mentality. I mean, they are feeling as if they're in a collegiate football program, and that's the way they look at it. It's not like an after-school activity. Right. Those guys are so bought into that program that they're there to work, and they're working. There's no joking around. There's no playing on the side. They're listening to that man as if he's a reverend at a church giving a sermon, and that tells you a lot about the program and the type of coach that he is. So
there you go. What do you think their chances are in the state playoffs now that they've advanced through the northern region? They play that Makataka Toko team.
Well, they haven't done well at the state level. I guess when they were playing Double A, they went twice and lost in the semifinals when they were in Double A. But I mean, they always have a chance. When you put two teams together that haven't played before and you don't know a whole lot about them, you're only going basically on film work. A lot of things can happen. It's going to be December. It's going to be cold out. Turnovers are a big factor in these kind of games. So it's really. I mean, I think they're going to have a benefit at playing at home. Mickey always he always says playing at home is great for us. We get to follow our normal routine. They played their last 2 regular season games at home. Their 2 games in the playoffs were at home. So this is the 5th straight week they're playing at home. BJ.
Well, I mean, they're playing a team that's won 10 straight games. They're 10-1, so obviously their only loss was the first one of the season. So this team's got a full head of steam. The Warriors of Matoaka, I believe is how you say it. We're still wondering.
Sounds like a pudding.
But the Warriors are coming off a win over Colonial Heights, a 41-15 win. So they have the chance. They have the opportunity to put up big numbers, and they've got some names over there that we should mention. Patrick Mills is a running back, went for over 100 yards in that 41-15 win over Colonial Heights. Sonny Clater went over 100 yards receiving, and their quarterback Jesse Haney had 220 yards passing. So this is a balanced team. This is a team that can get it done on the ground and can throw as well. And I don't know if Stonebridge in Liberty has faced a team of that nature, somebody who's that balanced or that explosive. I don't know what Colonial Heights brought to the table to play that team, but I know that Stonebridge has not faced a team of that caliber. So it's going to be good to see how they can respond.
And I think based on past history, the D5 teams haven't fared as well as the D6 teams in the state tournament. I've been here for 5 years, and I can't name the last D5 school that actually got into the finals.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they fare.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about this D6 game because that obviously was a highly anticipated game. A lot of surprises in this game, beyond the final score, which of course is 42-24, Oakton winning the regional title over Westfield. Clearly the margin of victory was a surprise. Clearly the matchup between the running backs and the imbalance in the final statistics was a pretty big surprise as well. I think it was definitely a coming out party for our friend at Oakton.
Well, Keith Payne has felt like he's been coming out, for a long time. He feels like he doesn't get the pub that maybe Royster and Caparelli do, and I guess you gotta beat the best to be the best, and he did that certainly. This weekend, the kid came out and had 244 yards on 35 carries and 5 touchdowns. against the Westfield team that has not given up points like that all year. I mean, Westfield, everybody knows their offensive ability with Evan Royster, and they have a couple quarterbacks there that can throw the ball pretty well, but their defense has been kind of an unsung hero for them, and they haven't given up points like that. And Payne, I talked to an assistant coach today at Oakton who told me, he told him in practice, aren't you sick of living in these kids' shadows? Talking about Caparelli and Royster, and apparently he was. I got a chance to talk to him after their last victory against Annandale, and I said, you guys are running into Royster and company. And he welcomed the challenge. In fact, he welcomed that challenge before the Annandale game. He said he wanted to play against the best, and he felt that was Evan Royster. And boy, did he ever have a coming out party for the rest of the county to finally get on board and respect his abilities.
Well, you think about even our colleague Rich Sanders, who covered the game for The Connection. He comes back from that game and he's singing the praises of Payne. I mean, he's talking about Payne being one of the best running backs he's ever seen. And I'm pretty sure Rich has been in this county since the Quakers were here.
Yeah,
were they ever here?
Rich has been around the county for over 20 years.
Exactly.
And for Rich Sanders to say that, and I think Rich saying that he was pointing to a lot of different things about Payne, his size, the way he ran, the grit, the power, and the finesse. He told me a lot of things he saw, which I've been seeing all year. But I mean, when you get a guy that's been around for 20 years, giving that compliment out, that's a pretty big compliment.
Jeff, let's touch on Westfield for a second. This loss, and it's a pretty significant loss for this program because they came into this game with all the momentum in the world after dismantling Robinson. So the question is now, was it an off day for Robinson against Westfield? Was it more of a Robinson loss maybe in that game, and maybe Westfield in the end, as some people had been saying all year, wasn't as good as people thought they were?
Well, when you look at the Concord District the entire year, it was really hard to gauge who was number one. 1 week Centerville looked like world beaters beating Robinson, and then you see Robinson pretty much handle Oakton real good. So it was really hard to gauge, but I think, in the end, I think Payne really surprised people on what he was able to do. Oakton's defense, showed up. They held Evan Royster to, I guess it was 70-some yards, and that's the second time in 2 years they've done that. They weren't able to do it the first game, but for Oakton, they've beaten Westfield 4 times in the last 4 years, 3 in the playoffs to knock Westfield out. So I don't know if it's something that Oakton has their number. They really understand how to play Westfield. But for Westfield, it was really surprising. I thought Westfield's defense was playing pretty well. They had held Robinson pretty much under 14, 15 points for 2 straight weeks. So to give up 42 to Oakton, kind of surprising. So it'll be interesting to see how Westfield fares in the coming years. A lot of their top players over the last 2 or 3 years have been transfers. Eddie Royal, Josh Whitmer was a transfer this year. He'll be coming back. They lose Evan Royster, obviously. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to kind of keep up that level of play that they've been used to.
Almost nearly 500 yards of total offense for Oakton. I'm willing to bet they haven't done that all year. Even their quarterback, Kevin Houghton, who wasn't particularly known for throwing the ball, very well. He throws a good ball, but he had some receiving core problems so far this year. Even ended up with 51 yards. He completed 4 of 6 passes. So you see, they don't throw the ball very much, but he was accurate when they did, and that's the type of thing that makes the defense step back and respect the pass, and maybe that opened up some holes for Payne. I want to mention Taylor Nalepa, 14 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown. That guy's been an unsung hero for that team all year. He's an incredible fullback, and he opens up holes for Payne that give that kid all day to run, and as did the offensive line. So Oakton's defense did pretty well. They had Sean Purcell and Mark Davis both got some interceptions for the team. So they are rolling into that playoff game.
Exactly. And before we get to that playoff game, I think it deserves mentioning Joe Thompson.
Right.
Here's a guy who, I remember when Pete Bendorf left that job, and he left it on a high note. There were some questions when Joe took the job, what that program was going to be, whether there was going to be a significant drop-off with Pete not there, or whether the success of the program will continue. One could argue that this program is better than it's ever been under Joe Thompson, and he's a guy who doesn't get named like Tom Verbanek, like Mark Bendorf, like these Mike Skinner, like these other D6 coaches that seem to always have this sort of gravitas, if you will, whenever people talk about them. And it's like how I rolled my tongue right there. That was very good. But now I think when you see what they were able to do against Westfield, when they win this regional title, combine that with all the success they've had under Thompson, is he now elevated to that level? Are we going to start talking about him as this sort of Svengali like we talk about everybody else?
I think age has a lot to do with it, and experience. And Joe's been there for a while, as an assistant. But I mean, he's going to have to put in a couple more years before we start thinking. And you mentioned those guys, Urbanek, Skinner, Bendorf. They've won state titles, and even Bendorf, got to the state championship game, fell a little bit short 3 years ago. If you want to start talking about Thompson with the Vermanics and the Skinners, he's going to have to win a state title. He's done a great job, but the trophies are, I think, are where it's at. And in people's minds, certainly we know what a great coach he is, but for the average person, you got to have to win a state title.
Well, Mr. Kuperoulis, what is the feasibility of them getting to that state title game? I understand they have a pretty tough matchup coming up this week against LC Bird.
Yeah, it's going to be a good matchup. I talked to an assistant coach over there today, and he likened LC Bird to two teams we're familiar with, which is good for our viewers because they can kind of get a sense of what maybe Oakton's running into. They're going to be running into a team that has supposedly an offense much like Herndon's. Herndon's offense was balanced, and they could pass the ball well. They had a running core, which was incredible, a bunch of young guys that could pretty much get it done on the ground. And they're going to be running into a defense that was likened to Centerville. Centerville's defense was pretty intense this year. They gave up some yardage, they gave up some points, but in certain games they rose to the occasion.
And active too.
Right, they were.
Yeah,
they were
aggressive.
And so one way to look at it is, which was pointed out to me by this assistant coach, was that their LC Bird is an athletic team, maybe a bit undisciplined, but tries to come out and just out-athleticize you. You're not going to be able to do that against Oakton because they're an athletic team. You can't out-athleticize them. It's just, that won't happen. Maybe they could do that with teams in their region and to get to this point, but if that's what that team is counting on to get by Oakton, that's not going to happen. We saw that, with a lot of teams this year. Robinson was able to beat Oakton. Westfield was able to beat Oakton. But in big games, when it counted, we saw that wasn't the case. So this is a pretty big game. This is going to get them to the state final if they can get past LC Bird, which is obviously, we should mention, the Central Region champion. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what happens. And
but I think from an Oakton perspective, you have to be happy with the way the seedings fell this year, having LC Bird in the first round versus the two juggernauts that are meeting each other over on the other side of the bracket.
Right.
So it all works out nicely for them. This is like you said, this is a great opportunity for them to get to that state title game. They're a balanced team. Balanced teams, to me, can always handle teams that just sort of rely on talent. What made Lansdowne so good last year is I think that they were a team that had incredible individual talent, but they also had a great team scheme as well. So maybe if Bird is one of these more, as you call it, undisciplined, maybe they freelance a little bit during the game, I think a well-coached team like Oakton is going to have an advantage over a team like that every game.
And to get to this point, LC Bird, they're 11-0. They're undefeated. Oakton cannot say that about themselves. So LC Bird is undefeated, and they handled Patrick Henry pretty easily, 35-7. They outgained him on the ground, 367 yards to a $178. So the Skyhawks are coming into this game after a game where they averaged 8.5 yards per carry against a team in Patrick Henry, which was 10-0.
Wait, so their nickname is the Skyhawks?
Right.
They're the birds, basically?
Right, they are the Birds.
That's just awful. It really is. You got to admit, it's pretty awful.
Yeah, so.
It's like the freedoms, just stupid.
The Skyhawks.
Exactly.
Jesus.
All right, thank you. All right, well, now that I've brought the football discussion up. Oh, by the way, one more thing about football that we should mention. We heard from some folks in connected to the Virginia High School League that the redistricting and relocation and reclassification, whatever, the R&R committee is going to recommend that Loudoun Valley be moved to the Cedar Run district over in the Northwest region. So their stay as a quasi-Northern region team might be short-lived. The question is, when are they going to move? I mean, it could be at the end of this scheduling cycle, which would be a year from now, or maybe they're going to move them for next season. That part is still sort of cloudy, but the state has sort of recommended that Valley be moved to the Northwest region, which is, of course, ironic because that was where the Northern region was hoping they would be moved before they got moved to the Northern region. So.
And maybe they're hoping that now that they saw what Loudoun Valley came in and did in their first year, that's something that's got to get a lot of praise.
Exactly. I mean, in the postseason, you're talking about volleyball going to the regional semifinals, Football going to the regional semifinals.
And the same for Stonebridge. Stonebridge's volleyball team went to the state tournament. So
Yeah.
Stonebridge ain't going nowhere. Stonebridge is going to stick around for the long run. I don't see them moving. I don't see Valley wanting to move either. I mean, maybe it's just a matter of teams not wanting to travel out to Valley. Obviously, we knew that going into this districting cycle. And Valley can say whatever they want to say, and the region can say whatever they want to say. They're here now. They don't have to go anywhere. The state's going to recommend whatever the state wants to recommend. They did it the last time around with Valley. Valley ended up where they wanted to end up. And the truth be told about Valley, and what I've been told by several people beginning when they came into the northern region, before they came in, was that they're just hanging around for a couple of years until they can get back to Loudoun Valley in the regular Dulles district where they came from, because they're going to open up another school in western Loudoun.
Right.
That's been the talk ever since then. So, as for shuffling any more than they've already been shuffled, they're just riding that wave until the school gets going out there.
And it should be said, they're not here. They're
Right.
kind of here, but they
Right.
play all the regular season stuff over in the Dulles district. And if this is a situation where they're going to have a regular season within the Cedar Run district, then maybe it's the right decision. Because combination districts are just ridiculous. That's a stupid idea, to have a team play an entire regular season against one set of competition and then go into the postseason against another set of competition when those teams in that district haven't even seen Loudoun Valley in most of these sports.
And I think that's what you see, why we can point to the fact that they're just planning on going back, because this is just a temporary fix, this combination stuff. You see Stonebridge, they came in, they played it all, and they're going to play it all. I don't think Valley had that sense of let's stick around. I think they're just trying to get back home.
God, it's like LSN tonight. It's like the Loudoun Sports Network. I don't know what the hell happened here. Let's get back to Fairfax County. All right, Fairfax Sports Report, of course, that being, let's talk about basketball.
Oh, yeah.
In case you have not seen it, and it just came out today, so you probably have not seen it, this is the Connection, I'm going to hide behind it, the Connection Basketball Hoops Handbook Preview for 2005-2006.
who is that on the cover there,
I
Greg?
believe that'd be four of the greatest athletes to come through the Northern Region basketball community in the last 20 years. They got Carol Lawson here, and Grant Hill here, and Scotty Reynolds here, and Jasmine Thomas over here. So it's a great cover story dealing with these two remarkable players, and of course the usual local coverage and capsules and all that good stuff. So do check it out if you get a chance. Let's begin with a look around the region here. Let's start off in the Liberty District, specifically the boys. Now, the boys in the Liberty District, to me, is sort of an interesting situation in the fact that W.T. Woodson, which won 27 straight games last year, made the regional semifinals, won the Liberty District last year in the tournament, lost 4 out of 5 starters, basically, and lost Mike Flugrath, their coach, to South County. So they are obviously going to be a different team. Langley, which is a perennial contender in the Liberty District, lost their coach, Brian Doyle, to Centerville. Now this, to me, opens the door for 2 teams in a pretty big way. And those 2 teams would be Madison, which has a ton of talent coming back, and Marshall, which has a lot of talent and one of the best coaches in the region, in my opinion. What say you?
Me say that we give the credit to a team that's been able to do it year after year with talent or no talent, whatever you want to call it. When they've been up and they've been down, it seems like they've been even keel, and that's South Lakes. Coach Bird has been around and doing it for a long time, and it seems like he's got some talent this year, and it seems like, like you said, Madison and Marshall are going to be great teams. But just starting off with South Lakes, because they have been a great program. And then when you look at a program as a whole, they've got one of the best around, and they've got some talent now that grew up quick. I mean, they were all sophomores last year. A couple guys I want to mention that are now juniors that have come back to a team that got a lot of experience as sophomores is Julian Vaughn, one of the highest, highly touted recruits in this area. James DePasso, James Parnham, Peter Libero, Brandon Davis, and Gareth Bassard is somebody that's transferring to South Lakes, who actually was at South Lakes. He went to Bishop O'Connell, and now he's back. So they are a huge team inside. They can do a lot around the basket, and so they're going to be a force to be dealt with this year for sure. I see them definitely, being able to weather that storm like they did last year when it was supposed to be a rebuilding year. They finished pretty well. So I see South Lakes as one of the teams definitely to be dealt with. But like you said, Madison and Marshall are surely going to give them a run.
And when we start doing these previews, we kind of keep our ear to the ground a little
Our
bit.
ear, sir?
Yes, to the ground, and we do hear a bit of scuttlebutt about Madison being a team that people have sort of elevated into this echelon, if you will, of being a regional contender. What is it about Madison that has people buzzing?
Madison is returning 4 starters from last year's team that, they finished 14-11, right over 500, but, did pretty well under a first-year head coach coming over from Oakton. Coach Chris Kublank came in, and these guys had a season over 500, which is respectable in a coach's first season at a new school. But the thing is, they've got 4 starters back, 3 of which are going to play collegiate basketball, and they're the only team that's going to be able to challenge South Lakes under the basket because they have the size too. A few guys to mention who are returning: point guard John Ogolo, who did an incredible job last year, Brandon Altman, Warren Edney, and they've got an interesting case in a sophomore who's Todd Chrissy. Big guy. He's going to get in there and he's going to bang. He's going to bang under the hoop. So they've really got a well-rounded roster. And Coach Kublank put it pretty well. He says if we stay healthy, stay away from sickness, and we don't listen too much at the dinner table, I think we can contend for the region. It's a good way of putting it. Not letting the cart get before the horse, not listening to all the talk. And they do play Herndon Friday, which a lot of people believe will be the matchup in the region final. So we'll see how things shake out. But Madison surely looks like a team to be dealt with, and coaches are definitely talking about Madison.
Over on the girls' side in the Liberty District, it's sort of funny how it sort of mirrored each other. The Woodson girls lose their 2 best players, Ashley McCulloch and AJ LeMaitre. They lose their coach, Renee DeVarney, coming off a year where they won the district title. They'll obviously take a little bit of a hit. Pat Neary's got a good group coming back that can shoot the ball really well, but they clearly aren't the same team they were last year. So in theory, this now might be the year that Cheryl Buffo and the Langley Saxons take a step up to potentially challenge for the regional title, for the district title, I should say. I don't know about the region, but the district title. And Marshall would, of course, be another team that we always watch because Noelle Klippenstein, in a very short time there, has turned that program into a consistent winner. Who do you like so far in the Liberty, from what you can tell?
You mentioned a couple of good teams. Langley went 21-7 last season, but the thing with Langley is they lost, and the numbers prove it. They lost 80% of their offense Erica Immel, Farah Goal, and Kimberly Germain. These were 3 players. Germain averaged 11.7 per game. Immel 13.6. And Goal had 9.7 a game, but 212 rebounds. So these are some girls that were really holding it down for the Langley team, and now they've got some really young talent in there that will be led by Katie Comstock, who is a senior, and I believe one of the only senior starters besides Shanika McNair. So they're going to have some talent, but it's just a matter of maybe pulling them all together and being able to fill the voids left by the big 3 that have now gone on, all 3 of which are playing collegiate sports. So some good athleticism.
I'm putting my money on South Lakes, Greg Wyszynski.
I was just going to ask you about that, Jeff Graham. Do you boys think that they're going to be better than their 0-21 record last year?
I would bet on it. 0-21 last year. They have a new coach, Christy Winters Scott. I guess she's real familiar with the program over there. I even hear that the kids have a playbook this year.
Do they now?
To follow. So, and BJ, you've learned more about that. They're excited over there to have a new coach.
Yeah, and this coach is somebody that anybody who knows anything about South Lakes or the history of that school, it's a name that they'll remember. It's Christy Winters. I'm going to leave that last part off just so they remember Christy Winters, who was a player at South Lakes. Okay, Christy Winters won a state title. Back in the late '80s, the team went undefeated. I believe it was 29-0. And so she's back now after she played at Maryland. She went on to become an assistant coach at George Mason as well as Georgetown, where she recently left now to come to South Lakes and coach her alma mater. So she's really excited to come back to where she's got a banner hanging over her head that she helped put up back in the late 80s. And she called it like a circle of life type thing she's having trouble, getting used to. But, her last name now is Winter Scott, married to Jerome Scott, who was also a former South Lakes basketball player. But you mentioned that, they were 0-21 last season, and they've got a lot of rebuilding to do. I mean, that's really tough to come back from. But I think this coach has the right spirit. They're calling her Coach Carter over there because she had them sign a contract, just like in the movie when Coach Carter was helping to rebuild a team, and she says every minute in practice is accounted for. I think it's the structure that's really going to help that program rebound, and she's doing the right thing. She's bringing in freshmen as starters to build for the long run.
There you go. And we do have a picture of her in the paper, and I can inform you all that she doesn't look like anything like Sam Jackson, which I think is a good thing. Because that would be sort of
Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, he's Sam Jackson if you know him. That's how I roll.
Jesus.
I don't know about you.
Hey, if you want to get a better look at Christy Winter Scott, you can go to South Lakes game, or you can watch Channel 10 and watch the Round Ball Report. We'll give a plug to our fellow
there you go.
journalist on TV.
Fantastic.
She does the Round Ball Report, which is a basketball
She's
show.
She's on for that half hour when we're not on.
Right.
So catch her if you can. National District, let's touch on them real quick. On the boys' side, Wakefield took an enormous hit through graduation after their amazing run to the regional title last year. They bring back a kid by the name of George Johnson, who's a very athletic kid. Tony Bentley, though, has sort of put the word out that this is now the beginning of another cycle. This is the beginning of building back towards where they were last year and making a run potentially for a state championship. I still think Wakefield's good enough to win the national. They're going to get a good push from Edison and a good push from a revitalized Mount Vernon team. And, of course, you can't count out W&L with Josh McDaniel at guard. On the girls' side, it begins and ends with Edison. Dorena Campbell is arguably right there with Jasmine Thomas as being the best player in the northern region on the girls' side. Edison's going to walk away with that district, but I wouldn't be surprised if the number 2 team in that district this year is Wakefield. They bring back 3 strong players from last year. They've got a new coach named Devon Drayton, and they're looking pretty good right now. And then Mount Vernon, that perennial team that always seems to be in contention in the national, I had them third, and that's probably how it's going to shake out. Edison is going to walk away with that district both in the regular season and the tournament, and it'll be interesting to see how they fare on a regional level.
I think the key for Edison on the girls' side is keeping Campbell healthy. Last year she had an injury that kind of affected her late in the season, and they weren't able to advance in the regional tournament like we expected them to do. Mm-hmm. So if they stay healthy, they should be able to advance pretty far. And
speaking of Edison, I'm going to be Captain Segway here for a second. On the boys' side, Ivan Thomas was a guy who really, as a coach, built the Edison boys team into a contender, had some great talent on that team, and really showed he could utilize the talent and do some good things with it. Well, he's at TC Williams now, and TC Williams is a team with a ton of talent, and I don't think that there is much disagreement that they are, if not the pick right now in the Patriot District on the boys' side, that they're right there at the top as far as teams you're looking at.
And Greg, why are they the pick and maybe not Hayfield, as we've learned?
Well, the news this week is sort of disconcerting. Antonio Heyman on Tuesday was suspended from school, not from the team, but from school at Hayfield. And the only thing that Coach Dave Abella would tell us is that he's suspended pending further disciplinary action. We don't know what that means. There's a lot of rumors floating around. I'm sure if you know where to look
do some
up,
digging.
If you go dub and you know where to go, you could probably dig up something or other, and it's all scuttlebutt. None of it's been substantiated, so we're not going to comment on it here. But it's a real shame if Heyman doesn't play either the majority of these games for Hayfield or at all this season. He's the Patriot District Player of the Year. He was a kid they were going to build around and try to get back to the point where they were last year, even though they graduated 4 or 5 starters. He was going to move out to the wing and be a big scorer for them and have Mike Davis kind of take over in the post. If he does not play, and right now we should say we don't know what the situation is. We know he's suspended. We know he's not going to play this weekend, but we don't know what his status is for the rest of the season. If he doesn't play, that changes the entire landscape of not only the Patriot District but the Northern Region, and it's a darn shame for that program because they might have been the only program at Hayfield that didn't take a severe hit from South County. And they still had a number of players on that team that could come together. They got a point guard in from Mount Vernon who could really kind of come together and challenge for a district title, even though they lost all that talent through graduation. But if he's not there, I can't see them doing much.
And
of anything.
Hayfield's, I think, proven that they've been the best team on the boys' side the last 3 or 4 years, and especially with losing a coach like Charlie Thompson. For a new coach to come in and not have all his pieces, together, and not having his main piece, it's got to be disconcerting at this point in the season.
And it should be said that David Abella was handpicked by Charlie to kind of take over that team, and there is talent there beyond Heyman. But if he plays, it greatly increases the chances that they're going to contend for a championship versus if he doesn't play. But again, that's a developing situation. Basically said all we know, and we'll just see how it shakes out. Lake Braddock, of course, can never be discounted. Brian Metris is one of the best coaches in the northern region, and they have a good inside-outside game this year with Richard McGee and Chris Kuntz. West Springfield is sort of a team in flux. Lee, new to the district, not really sure what you get with them. They've got a lot of question marks, a lot of young players in that team. Mike Pflugrath in South County. I'd say Pflugrath is going to have a team in about 2 years. It's the same thing as Pete Vendorf, really. Two great coaches. They both know how to build a program, but they're just not there yet with the level of talent, but the talent's going to come eventually to that school. I'd say right now top three, even with Heyman out of the lineup, I think Hayfield's still one of the top three teams in the district. I'd probably say TC, Braddock, Hayfield if he doesn't play. If he plays, TC and Hayfield are neck and neck.
And like we said on the girls' side, a team that we thought, or at least for the past couple of years, that's been really great. Like Braddock, Abby Robertson has been the dominant post player in the region. She's gone now, so Lake Braddock goes from being a forward-oriented team to a guard-oriented team, and you don't really know what you're going to get there.
Exactly, and she's of course now playing at the University of Virginia as a freshman. She was the most dominant post player in the region. Graduates, they're going to go more guard-oriented, perimeter shooting, that sort of thing. West Springfield's still the class of that district. They have a ton of talent. They remind me of a team that they had a few years ago that didn't have a superstar, but had a lot of pieces. And it's just going to be on Bill Gibson to kind of figure out where those pieces fit. I think by the end of the year, he's going to have a lineup he's going to be happy with, and that's a team that's going to contend for a regional title. Other girls' teams in the Patriot to watch out for, South County. South County basically took 3 of the top 4 players from Hayfield, and Lauren Robinson, one of those players, right now is ineligible. There's some discussions with the district today trying to get her reinstated to play, but if she plays, Robinson, Lauren Reinshuttle, and Brittany Carlock are 3 players that can carry that team in that district to at least to the regional playoffs and maybe even farther, depending on how good the supporting cast is. And they do have some players in that team for Coach Jason Grubb that can really do some things. So South County in their first year might be making a big impact in that district if everything goes as well.
And Grubbs used to kind of, I think last year dealt with some youth on a Falls Church team that struggled. So it'd be interesting to see how he does, if they are as talented as they seem to be, how he fares over there.
And we should throw out one more name about the Patriot District girls scene. That would be Tiara Ruffin-Pratt, a freshman at T.C. Williams, who is without a doubt one of the most exciting young players to come through this region, maybe since Jasmine Thomas a few years ago. They always seem to be a couple of years apart, but she is a player that they were talking about even as an 8th grader being ready to play in the northern region. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact she has. I remember a coach telling me that the problem with Pratt this season is going to be she's going to be so good, you wonder whether or not those players can play with her. So it'll be interesting to see what TC does in the Patriot. Right now, I'd say Springfield is the prohibitive favorite, depending on how the eligibility thing goes with South County. They might actually be number 2 in that district right now with the talent they have in from Hayfield last year.
And Ruffin Pratt and Jasmine actually play against each other, at some point this year when Oakton and TC match up. So that may be one of the highlighted girls games to see this year.
There you go. Concord District on the boys' side. I suppose this discussion begins with Mr. Reynolds and the Herndon Hornets, doesn't it?
Yeah, Herndon is playing an incredible schedule this year. They've obviously got Scotty Reynolds, who, like we did mention, is part of our cover story. If you get the opportunity, Scotty is an incredible story, somebody to really want to read up about, because he's going to be a name that you're going to hear for a long time in basketball talk. Just an incredible story, and somebody that, if you have the chance to go out to a game, you definitely should get out and see him play while you still can, because like Gary Hall said, the coach over at Herndon, they don't come around like this every year. This is somebody who's a special talent. So, but they've got an opportunity with Scotty there to get some games with some teams that nobody around here is getting games with, and they're playing arguably the toughest schedule in the history of this region, and possibly they're playing the toughest schedule of any public school in the country. Okay, so think about that. Any public school in the entire country, they're playing the rankings done by USA Today here, but they're playing the number 1 ranked team in the country, Montrose Christian. They're playing the number 2 ranked team in the entire country. One team you may have heard of, one Oak Hill Academy, and they're also playing DeMatha, which they played last year, and Scotty had 43 points on DeMatha. So they're playing some very, very tough matchups, and they're playing those tough matchups in collegiate stadiums, which is for one reason and one reason only, and Scotty said it best. They don't want everything that they work for all year to go to waste because they're undefeated. They don't care about being undefeated. They care about going deep in the postseason and being prepared to be the top team in the postseason and be battle tested. And that's what Herndon's Gary Hall said. He said, I don't want to see deer in the headlights. And that's happened before at Herndon. So this is one of the greatest opportunities for a Northern Region team to play some very high caliber programs.
The question I have is this decision to have this incredibly tough schedule, this gauntlet, if you will, is this decision based more on getting them battle tested, or is there a certain amount of, let's say, prestige that goes along with having a schedule like this?
Absolutely, there's some prestige there. Gary Hall, he's in his 17th year at Herndon, and he knows what this brings to the school. He's not blind to that. But a lot of it, some of it's prestige, obviously, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have a very special player. This is not going to happen again, maybe for a long time. So why not get him out there and give him an opportunity to play these tougher teams and possibly become a McDonald's All-American by playing these tougher teams, and that also brings prestige to the school. So there's a lot of things that go along with it. But the point is, they're not getting a game with Oak Hill Academy if Scotty Reynolds isn't on that team. Sure. They're not getting a game with Montrose Christian. And so that, and if you get a chance to read the cover story, it discusses Scotty's opportunity to go play at private schools of that caliber, all of which wanted him. And staying in the Northern Region has really helped to boost the region's popularity. And like Hall said, he said, now coaches can look and point to Scotty and say, that's why you should stay in public school. So this kid isn't just a kid that has played well for himself and that's it. He's done a lot for the area. So he's like I said, if you can get a chance to get out there and watch him play, do so.
There you go. We'll talk about Reynolds a little bit later on, a little bit more in depth, but I wanted to get back to this district preview. Herndon, I think, is the consensus number 1 in that district based on the talent they have coming back, not only with their best player, but in the depth they have behind them. Any idea who number 2 could be? I think Westfield is a team that can definitely contend for that position. Fairfax, new to the Concord this year, brings in Joey Lynch-Floor, the big 6'7" pivot, and also a kid by the name of Jordan Gibson, who transferred in from O'Connell, who's a real athletic kid. He's going to be playing at Yale. Anybody else kind of in the mix for that sort of runner-up position in the Concord?
I'd almost have to give the edge right now to Fairfax only because Westfield graduated 4 starters. Maurice Hubbard, their sophomore forward, is back. But when you graduate, 4 starters and 5 of your top 6 players, I mean that's a real tough blow for them. As far as what else is in the district, it's a real toss-up. I think Centerville could be improved with Doyle this year, but they, like they said, they graduated 3 of 5 players from last year. Chantilly, Jim Smith was counting. 2 years ago, he said, I'm going to take 5 of these underclassmen that I have, I'm going to get them ready, and this year they're going to be around. Well, as of now, 1 of them is going to be playing. 3 of them transferred away, and 1 of them has an injury. So Chantilly could be hurting this year. I know Oakton is probably a little bit down. They Chase Miller, one of their top-notch guards, graduated, or not graduated, actually transferred to Herndon,
which makes Herndon get all the more deep.
No less.
Yeah.
And Robinson had 1 win last year on the boys' side. So as far as I think Herndon, with Scotty Reynolds is the number 1. It's going to be interesting to see if their forwards, Danny Jones, Larry Benyon, can kind of follow Scotty's lead. And play better than they did last year. They played good, but not good enough to advance them. So if they've improved, I think Herndon has to be considered the region's top team.
And you mentioned Oakton losing Chase Miller. The testament to Herndon's program and how hard it is, and how good they are. How hard it is to just walk into a team like Herndon and think you may be a starter. Chase was a great player
two-year starter while he was at Oakton.
Right, and then now he's sitting the bench at Herndon, and it may just be a matter of getting worked into the lineup and earning your respect and getting into that program. You have to change programs and styles, but I know Oakton is hurting because of that loss. They've got some guys there though that are going to do what they can. Rich Conlon's a guard that's going to help fill that void, but one guy to mention at Oakton who was an All-Concord district selection last year was Chris Despins, who's their big man, who is out at the start of the season with an ACL injury. That and it's difficult for someone like that to be sitting on the sideline who Chris Duke said did everything right in the offseason. And the way he got hurt was through a car accident, and those things happen, and they're going to be hurting at the beginning of the season because of some losses, some that they had no control over. So
on the girls' side, Oakton is in an interesting situation. They were a state semifinalist last year. On the one hand, you have arguably the best player in the region coming back in Jasmine Thomas. On the other hand, you graduate 4 senior starters. How does it all shake out for Oakton this year? I mean, is she good enough to kind of carry that team, or are they going to have some problems with depth, considering the fact they lost so much from the starting lineup?
Well, they reloaded a bit. I mean, yeah, they did lose, 4 seniors, and she was starting as a sophomore, and she's coming back now as a junior captain. So that tells you something. A junior captain, obviously, she's talented and deserves that, captain spot, and she's the most battle tested out of all of them. But they've got some players. Ashley Abed is a junior. Brittany Burton's a senior. They've got Alex Boone and Jackie Shoemaker, 2 transfers, private school transfers that are coming in that are juniors that have played at a high level, and I think they seem to have reloaded well enough so that Thomas has a good enough supporting cast, because teams are going to key on her this year for sure, and she's going to have that supporting cast step up and carry some of the load, because she can't do it all by herself.
If the supporting cast isn't quite as good as it was last year, I think it's safe to say that Jasmine is going to be even better than she was last year, and that was pretty good.
Yep.
But like you said, she will need some support.
The 2 teams I think that are vying for the runner-up spot right now in the Concord, Robinson and Westfield. Westfield took a hit graduation-wise. Robinson did too, losing Emily Garner, but it appears as though they have a little bit more coming back than Westfield does, and they've got some pretty good young players to kind of supplement players like Sam Jones and a few others that are coming back that had an impact last year. How does Westfield shake out?
As far as Westfield's concerned, they lost their probably their entire backcourt. Katie Clarkin, who's playing at University of Mary Washington, Jessica Honesty, who's playing at East Carolina, and Marilyn Schaefer, who's playing at Hartford, their leading scorer and I think all-time leading scorer. But they're actually going to move their top returning player, Amanda O'Neill, who's kind of a small forward last year, a sophomore this year. She's moving her to point guard, so it's going to be a little bit of a change for her. But Pat Deegan said that this is a way to get her kind of more looks at the basket, put the ball in her hands more. But I think a couple teams to really keep your eye on are Centerville and Chantilly. Chantilly only graduated one significant player, and returned their backcourt, Shea McDonald, Melissa Furr, who Coach Kelly said could be the top 3 player in the district as a sophomore. So it's interesting there. And Centerville coach Gus Taylor said, hey, this is my 4th year. We've had 3 losing seasons. I'm tired of talking about how good we can be. This is the year we could do it. They returned 3 starters. Renee Watson's one of the best forwards in the district. So it'll be interesting to see if they finally finally put the step forward and say, hey, we're a winner. We're going to get into the region tournament.
It's going to be an interesting year. I mean, we have a section of the handbook that talks about all the coaching changes that occurred during the off season, and there are more, I think, in this off season than I can remember in recent off seasons. It's a completely new look, plus the redistricting. There's a lot of question marks heading into the season, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. I think we'll have a better understanding of it when we hit January, get past a couple district games, get past the holiday tournaments, and then maybe we'll have a better understanding of where some of these teams are. And of course, obviously, we have some issues of eligibility and things of that nature that also have to shake out as well. I was going to ask you, BJ, a little bit about Scotty Reynolds. You had a chance to sit down with him, have a really in-depth conversation with him. Anything surprise you about him as a kid? First time really getting to sit down with him?
Gary Hall said it best when I got a chance to talk to him about Scotty. He said, people always say Scotty's my favorite. And he goes, you know what? he is my favorite. He'll be your favorite too if you sit down and talk to him for more than 5 minutes. And boy, ain't that the truth. I mean, I did not want him to stop talking. He was an incredible young man. He's 18 years old, so he's a man, and he speaks like a man. He does things like a man, and he has all the integrity and character of a man. Incredible person, not just an incredible basketball player. It was a pleasure, I must say. The pleasure was all mine. He has a lot to say, and I'm 24 years old, and that kid knows a bit more than I may ever know about life. I mean, it's just incredible the things that were coming out of his mouth, and it wasn't just because I'm a reporter and I'm writing about him. Maybe some of it because that's what people do, but. Wow, I was totally blown away. Not what I expected at all. A complete gentleman, and if, like I said, if you have the opportunity to get out there and see him play, you're stupid if you don't, because they ain't coming around like this ever again.
You should make a poster.
Oh,
Scotty Reynolds, you're stupid if you don't.
Hey,
right there.
There you go. And
Amen.
Speaking of posters,
yes.
the kid doesn't have posters on his wall like everybody else. He's got something I found out when speaking to him. He's got clippings from websites and from newspapers and from message boards and from chat rooms about people saying things about him, negative things about his game, and negative things about maybe even him that he puts on his wall to motivate himself. And those are the type of things that you don't know about a person just looking at a stat sheet. And so I urge you to pick up the Connection this week and read the cover story. Also a great story on Jasmine Thomas, who's a great interview and a real good person. She's got a great family. Both of these kids have good families. So two talented players that you're never going to get a chance to see unless you get out and do so.
There you go. You're crazy if you don't.
Hey,
and you're stupid if you don't.
You may see him, but you're going to see him on TV only in the future.
There you go. And you'd be stupid if you don't watch the upcoming programming here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Captain Segway. FSN and Cox Communications present the high school game of the week. Coming up, the Virginia AAA Division 6 state semifinals between Oakton and the LC Bird.
Larry Bird.
Yeah, games air Saturdays at 6 on Cox 35. Repeat daily, 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. And FSN on the web, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Please visit the exciting and titillating photo gallery. Quality Care Ford Service Center, currently located in Fairfax, 703-383-6299. And CCI Screen Printing, thank you for your underwriting, 703-978-0257. Boys, good to have basketball back. I missed it a little bit. It's good to go to the gym, get that atmosphere. I'm sure district play is going to be real fun. You get all the knuckleheads at Oakland coming out for those games. I hope the knuckleheads at Woodson still come out like they came out last year for that team, because that was a rocking barn when those teams were playing at home. So hopefully we get to see some good ball coming up in the district.
I'm counting on it.
I'm going to miss some football.
Seriously, man.
I'm going to miss this paper. I don't have a ball. So I just have to kind of...
There you go, man.
Oh, thank you. I love basketball. Oh, I won't bounce it. Sorry, no. I was bouncing the ball. Hey, thanks everybody for watching the show. Join us next week for more hijinks and hilarity. And enjoy the football this weekend. Thanks, everybody.